Welcome to Geonosis, where the 4 clone commandos of Delta Squad, an elite unit of clones in service to the Galactic Republic, have just assassinated Sun Fac, trusted lieutenant of the influential separatist council member Poggle the Lesser. With their first objective completed, Delta Squad, which is composed of RC-1138, our boss, RC-1262, also known as Scorch, RC-1140, or Fixer, and RC-1207, called Sev. Now descend below the red pockmarked surface of Geonosis to sabotage a droid factory hidden deep below ground. And of course, this game is Star Wars Republic Commando from 2005, developed and published by Lucas Arts. So, as I said, our objective here is to destroy the factory, and the mission briefing reads, Delta Squad has improvised an entry and penetrated the foundry, but completing its mission will not be easy. Several vital components must be identified and destroyed in order to cripple the droid production line. So, Star Wars Republic Commando is a pretty cool Star Wars game. It's from that Lucas Arts era where they were pumping out a lot of very high quality Star Wars games. Not all of them, I suppose, but there was certainly sort of a golden age of Star Wars games, which we are certainly not in anymore with how rarely Star Wars games come out. So, this game is centered around playing as this squad of clone commandos who are sort of genetically specialized soldiers, a cut above the ordinary Star Wars clone trooper. And in the pamphlet, in the game case, which is a thing that doesn't really pop up these days, there's a cool little intro narrative thing, so I'll read that. The hot, quick puffs of breath inside your helmet become indistinguishable from the distant thumps of the ATTEs walking above on the surface. Minutes ago, you were riding a gunship amongst the chaos, fire and smoke blooming in the sky, blaster fire spraying up from Geonosis like fountains of colored light. For most of your clone brothers, the surface battle was the objective, but you are a clone commando. You are now in your element. The walls of the cavern tremble, and orange-red dust floats down from the ceiling, sprinkling the shoulder blades of your suit. Eject the clip of your DC-17 modifiable blaster rifle and give it a good slap to make sure it's set. The dull sound echoes and is followed by a faint chittering, an insect-like sound. You look back and signal your squad mates to hold back and let you remain on point. They're anxious to get into combat, but the tunnel ahead opens into a chamber, and you can't see what's there. You're not only the leader, but also the most skilled in close-quarter confrontations. You step into the chamber as the insect sounds rise to a drowning chorus, and skeletal shapes loom out of the shadows. So that's an appropriate stage setting for Delta Squad's first mission, which of course takes place on Geonosis. And this game is, I would say, pretty fondly remembered. It's maybe not the most famous Star Wars game. I don't think it reaches the level of, say, Knights of the Old Republic. But it has survived in popular culture a little bit. For instance, Delta 62 Scorch, he has cameos in the Clone Wars and the Bad Batch television shows. And in fact, minor spoilers, but in the Bad Batch, he's actually kind of a minor antagonist. Not really a major character, more of an Easter egg than anything else for people who would recognize him. This game also, I'm pretty sure, originates the term Clanker as a slur for droids, which has certainly come into fashion recently with the rise of, AI in daily life. The plot of this game is not particularly interesting, in my opinion. It's fine, it's functional, but, the story is really bare bones. You're just basically doing, kind of ordinary missions as a squad. The emphasis is certainly more on, the characters, the squad dynamic, getting attached to the characters, and, playing out that clone trooper fantasy. Star Wars is often told from the perspective of Jedi Force users. And there's often, less of a focus on the, boots on the ground characters who don't have magical powers. So this game gives, I think, is beloved, especially by fans of the clone troopers, for giving, insight into what being a clone trooper was like. The game has some cool features. It's a little clunky to play, in my opinion, from a sort of a modern perspective. Oh, you know what? Here we have a new objective. Advance to the core ship saying, yeah, so there's a little clunkiness to it, but overall it's pretty okay to play. Honestly, my biggest issue was finding that enemies were just way too tanky. I've played through the first couple levels at this point. I'm starting this recording a little bit deeper into the game, just to skip, the tutorial stuff. And some enemies just are really just damage sponges, which gets a little old, but some of the fun aspects of this game are your command capabilities. You can issue commands to your squad. You can issue sort of general behavior commands. Are they going to be more aggressive or defensive and so on? But you can also order them to, take up certain positions, take up a sniper roost or a grenadier position. You also order them to overcome certain obstacles. So we just blew up the rock wall there. We have some ships zipping through the canyons here. Yeah, the clones can also hack consoles, open doors, a variety of things. So, the clone squad dynamics are kind of forefronted. You can also, command them to heal themselves and revive each other and so on. These Geonosis elites, for instance, are an example. You can see how spongy they are, how long it's taking me to kill it. Let's see, another kind of fun thing is your modifiable gun. You can change its configuration to turn it into a sniper rifle or, a regular kind of machine gun rifle. And in this level, later on, you will get the grenade launcher. You also have a pistol that never runs out of ammo, which I now have to use as I'm out of ammo, but I also have this beam rifle, which I am blasting everywhere. You can occasionally pick up like specialty weapons. It's kind of gory for a Star Wars game. Like when you melee the Geonosians and their blood splatters all over your visor. Star Wars doesn't usually get that visceral. This game has some cool music as well. It's more inspired by kind of military vibe music, more like chanting, sort of march chanting vibes. A little bit of a darker, more gritty tone than a lot of the classic John Williams Star Wars music. Got more bugs, more bugs. You fight a handful of enemies in this game. It's honestly not a huge game. chapters, I guess. We have a nice acclimator ship up there, which I think is kind of a sort of a design lineage of the Star Destroyers, right? I think it goes like from acclimators, and they evolve into Venators, which evolve into Star Destroyers. Yeah, the game has kind of 3 chapters. You are first on Geonosis, and then you go to the Prosecutor, which is a derelict Republic ship, and you have a little adventure there. And then you have an adventure on Kashyyyk, and that's the whole game. I've gone down, but it's not over because I can hope that one of my squad mates will revive me. Let's see if yeah, there we go. Thank you, my clone brothers. You have to kind of keep up the pressure in this game. There are certain objectives where you'll face like infinite enemy spawns until you complete the objective. And, you don't have infinite bullets, except for your pistol. We have some Geonosian starfighters whipping by up there, which are Nantex fighters. So there's, if you don't kind of keep the pressure up and try to make progress on an objective, you can kind of lose the war of attrition as your squad mates take damage and you run out of ammo. So, keep up the pressure would be my advice if you were going to play this game. And I'm only playing on the normal difficulty, so I don't think going up in difficulty would be too fun. Make the enemies even spongier. I do like the melee weapon, this little dagger that comes out of your gauntlet. Maybe it's sort of a vibroblade dagger. My dinky little pistol. The dagger is much better than the pistol. If you can land hits with it, it's pretty much an instant kill, I think, on any regular enemy. Oh yeah, and speaking of enemies, I was going to say that there's not a huge variety of enemies in this game. There's actually kind of a very small amount. There are battle droids, Geonosians, and Trandoshans. And there's a couple specialty enemies among those types. So there's like super battle droids and droidicas and some boss units like spider droids and magna guards. But that's pretty much the game's whole roster of enemies, which is not super impressive. But I think I've said before, I would rather have a nice, tight, short, small game than games these days tend to be, way too long get dragged out. So, it's not a major knock against this game for me that it's pretty short. But if you like it, of course, you would probably want more. I think this game has aged moderately poorly, to be honest. Just in the quality of the game feel, it's not the smoothest or most interesting game from that era, or first-person shooter from that era. It plays a lot worse than games that came out before it, In my humble opinion, I feel like, the gameplay of Halo from, 4 years earlier, is much better than this game. But I still think that this game is fun, and it's worth checking out if you have never played it before. And if you're a Star Wars fan, or, in particular, if you're kind of a fan of clones, I know that a lot of people are really big Star Wars clone fans. I have never been the biggest clone guy in the Star Wars lore. They're not the most compelling to me. And I've talked about this in my Lego Star Wars videos, but the control chips in the clone brains, I think, made the clones a lot less interesting as characters than if they were just, truly soldiers following orders. But I know that a lot of people are super into the clones, and if you are, and you haven't played this game, I would definitely recommend checking it out. It's the origin of the clone Commandos, which have been a recurring clone archetype. We have Gregor, right, from Clone Wars. He was a clone Commando. And obviously Scorch showed up later, as I said. You can play as a clone Commando in Star Wars Battlefront 2 as one of the special units. By the way, we're here to destroy this anti-aircraft turret. So let's get in there and take care of business. We have a bunch of droids, bunch of battle droids. Yeah, the clone personalities are also, I think, a fun part of this game. They're not like, to be honest, they're not incredibly interesting, deeply formed characters or anything, but they're charming and they have some, distinct enough personality traits that makes them stand out, and, they're fun to listen to. I'm pretty sure Dave Filoni just, stole Sev to make Crosshair, the guy from the Bad Batch. I don't know why the sniper always has to be the, cold, calculating, I'm gonna, I'm counting my kills, but, yeah, Crosshair feels like the spiritual, copy of Sev. this game. Which I'm sure Dave Filoni probably played and enjoyed this game, considering the references that appeared to this game in, Dave Filoni's shows. Dave Filoni, he loves the old Star Wars stuff. So here we just have to close these windows to prevent the entry of more Geonosians. There we go. This game, to me, feels a little more like it's in the same lineage as, like, arcade shooters, if that makes sense. It feels like something that, it's closer to something that I would play at, like, the movie theater arcade, Which I say that, but I think I've never once in my entire life played one of those games at the movie theater. I've gone to actual arcades before and played there, but I'm sure this is the same where you grew up. Like, the movie theater always had this little area that just had a ton of arcade machines, and nobody was ever there. Like, nobody was ever playing those games. The games were always just standing there abandoned. And as a kid, it was always so attractive to me, I always had this, like, dream that we were gonna, get out of the movie and my parents were gonna be like, hey, you wanna go play one of those games? Of course they never did. But, anyway, I have played, those on-the-rails first-person shooters at arcades before, and this feels a little more similar to that than, more modern first-person shooters. I can't really justify that completely. I think it's sort of the way that, like, you post up your clones to do an objective, and then you're kind of staying in one area fighting off waves of enemies. It reminds me of, in those games, how you would kind of track through an area and then come to a stop, and there would be like a horde of zombies or soldiers or whatever that would be entering the room that you were in. You have to blap them all. So, anyway, that's just, I guess some of my thoughts about this game, but here goes the anti-aircraft gun. Kaboom. Kaboom. There will definitely not be game audio for this video, I can tell. The noise is just so harsh, and also actually the music is gonna get copyrighted, so unfortunately I will have to mute this one. I will say with the spongy enemies, it is different once you get the grenade launcher, which I think can, like, one-shot super battle droids. So, yeah, I know that makes a big difference than just standing here having to unload clip after clip. Elites. So you can see, as I'm playing, all the commands you have to kind of be on top of, given to your squad. your squad mates had different buffs that they could give, right? Maybe there could be a whole kind of upgrade track for each of your squad mates. Kind of like a party-based RPG. And, you could say like, oh, if Scorch is, Scorch can provide you one grenade for your grenade launcher every 2 minutes or whatever, or after X number of kills, Scorch will provide you some ammo for your grenade launcher. And you could like upgrade that aspect of him, and he would give you more ammo. Or, if you had marked an enemy, your squad mates would do, 10% more damage to them. That sort of stuff. I know that this is not a party-based RPG in that sense, but I think it would make the squad dynamics cooler and feel more, cooperatively squad-like if you were relying on your companions for stuff like that. Because then there's parts of the game where you split up, and it'd be kind of cool to heighten that dynamic. Suddenly you don't have access to all of the buffs that you were using from your squad mates. But then maybe if you had invested more points into your individual capacity, then those parts would be a little easier for you. I like the look of the Geonosians in this game. They did a nice job on them. I mean, the Geonosians are just kind of cool aliens in the original design, but they were adapted nicely to this polygonal format. We can see the giant core ship there off in the distance, which we are approaching, so we'll get a closer look at that at some point. And they're kind of a cool ship. Well, I'll give some fun facts about them, maybe in a little bit when we get closer to it. You guys, ever have these Star Wars visual dictionaries? Those are like the Bible for a young Star Wars fan. So cool to flip through those, big glossy pages and just get a close look at all of the aliens and characters and technology of Star Wars. You learn the names and little facts about them and stuff. They were so compelling. That was DK, right? I think those books were published by DK Dorleen Kindersley. Is that right? Doreen Kindersley. Something in that ballpark is what that stands for. I don't remember the name super well because they were always just DK to me. But we had a ton of those DK books growing up. They were really fantastic books for a growing mind, in my opinion. I don't know, I'm probably biased because I had them. But, they were picture books, and so it was attractive to that, visual side of you, the visual side of the brain, and it was compelling to look at the pictures. Get a close look at animals or dinosaurs or whatever. Star Wars characters. But then there would also be, stuff to read. The little captions and things. So, it was pretty compelling on multiple levels and still felt educational, right? I don't know, I'm sure I'm just nostalgic for those, but I love those books. Just lie on the floor on my belly and have one of those open on the ground. That was a lovely afternoon, especially if, Mom would make me a little snack, a little grilled cheese and tomato soup or something. I mean, come on. Grilled cheese and tomato soup and a Doreen Kindersley book. Let's go. Let's go. That's what I've been waiting for. I've seen that the visual dictionaries have continued. I saw one for The Last Jedi. I'm sure that they've made them for the other Star Wars movies, modern Star Wars movies, which is great. Hopefully there's little kids who were watching those movies and, oh, that's a nice view of the core ship. It's just massive. So, the fun fact I have about that ship is, which by the way is called a Lucre Hulk battleship, but it is the central sphere from those droid control ships. If you've seen, or if you remember from the Trade Federation blockade of Naboo, they have those giant sort of circular ships with a little slot cut out of one side of the circle, like an overextended horseshoe, or like a more circular horseshoe. And then in the center of that ship, there's that big sphere. So the core ship is a modified Lucre Hulk. They have removed that central sphere, and that is the entire ship. You don't have the surrounding cargo hold area, because those Lucre Hulks are, I believe, I'm pretty sure they were originally cargo vessels. Makes sense for the Trade Federation, right? To have cargo vessels, and then those cargo vessels were repurposed into the battleships. So, I always thought, I think that's pretty cool. Here we have a spider droid. It's not that more typical spider droid with the spherical top. I have a thought in my mind that this one is called a dwarf spider droid. I have a voice in my head that's telling me that. I don't know if that's actually correct or not. After every fight, you do have to kind of stand by these Bacta stations and just tell all of your clones to go heal up, which can take a little bit as they each run to the station and pump out the Bacta. Is there like a secret down there? This is the way to progress, right? The objective marker. Okay. Oh wait, there was a little dialogue though. Okay. So this should give us access to the core ship, the Luker Hulk sphere. And our objective, if you remember, is to get the launch codes for a segment of the fleet, and then with those in hand, I believe we can basically prevent the ships that use that launch code from launching and separate them from the main fleet when they try to escape. Advanced core. It's also funny when you kill droids, you get those blood splatter effects as well on your visor, but it's, droid oil. So it's black oil rather than the, yellow Geonosian ichor. Oh, it's a little hot in this closet today. It's winter time, so you would expect it to be cold, but my apartment, I think we are getting sort of runoff heat from our neighbors. It feels very, extreme, It's not just a little bit. I'm sure buildings share temperature in that way to some extent. But our apartment, we can open the windows and there's snow outside. And even so, the apartment remains fairly warm. So it feels like an unusual amount of heat being pumped in, and our, heating is not turned on. So it is, I guess, kind of nice, in a sense. We're sort of stealing our neighbor's heat, and can save on the energy bill that way. But also, my roommates and I, we tend to prefer colder environments. And so we all like to keep things pretty chilly. And, we would open the windows in the wintertime anyways, just to keep it nice and cool. Infiltration of the core ship. Delta Squad has accomplished the public's first breach of an enemy capital ship, but the battle is not over. A horde of merciless battle droids lies dormant, ready to be awakened by heedless Commando. So, Delta Squad has split up. We are all going to be tackling different objectives aboard the core ship. En route to the bridge, each member of Delta Squad will be sabotaging a different core system. We are going to be disabling the droid loader. So to get there, we are going to be navigating through the storage racks, and as you can see, that is a lot of super battle droids. So we need to be careful not to wake them up. So we can walk through the racks here. We have a back station there, which is interesting aboard a droid-run ship to have you're building a ship that could ever be worked on by an organic, you must provide for basic safety requirements for the organics. Even in the Star Wars world, they have union rules. So, we are, just slipping through all of these stored up battle droids. We're getting communications from, oh, this is cool. Gives you a bit of sense of the sheer size of this ship. Not sure if I should have actually attacked that guy or not. It looked like he was about to attack me, but maybe I could have just walked past. And he is an elite, so he's gonna take me like 10 minutes to kill. A little turret up there. These elites aren't, ouch, not too bad. When they're on their own, you can just hide when their beam is firing, and then you're given a little safe window to fire. Holy cow. He's still kicking. Gotta be close. I'm getting reckless. I'm taking damage now because he's just not going down. Let's go, buddy. Let's go. There we go. Finally. Yeah, but these, these capital ships, these core ships, are absolutely massive. I mean, they're the size of, like, a building isn't even a good comparison because there are probably few buildings on Earth that rival the size of this core ship. So, it's fun to get a sense of the scale of it as we're, like, on this elevator here and you see just how gargantuan the interior is. Locate storage rack, control room. I am uploading an anti-protocol worm. Find a terminal. Affirmative. Trying to read you some of these, this dialogue. Your, commander or operator of Delta Squad is a clone that's just called Advisor. Trying to read some of the dialogue between the squad, but they're all talking very fast. Alright, squad, secondary objectives completed. Rendezvous. Rendezvous at the bridge. We're all heading to the bridge now to get the launch codes. The launch codes. That's pretty cool. The storage rack. I like that. The battle droid hanging. You can punch it around like a little hanging bag. It has some physics to it. That's awesome. This is a pretty fun set piece sort of design. Going through the storage racks and it's all falling apart. And we can just dispatch these guys very easily. grenade launcher. No secret ammo. Can place a demolition charge. Normally I would assign Scorch to do this, but we're all split up, so. That rebel destroyed that battle droid. Whoa. It's like the whole place is falling apart. Gonna get crushed by some swinging debris. So yeah, the Commandos as a concept have certainly rooted themselves into Star Wars at this point. I'm sure we'll get more appearances of them in future Star Wars games and shows and such. There's also the ARC Troopers. To be honest, I don't really understand the difference between ARC Troopers and Commandos. I know they're both like elite versions of clones, but I don't know what differentiates ARC Troopers from, that was a nice kill on that droidica. I don't know what differentiates ARC Troopers from Commandos. Is one like an evolution of the other, or do they just have two totally different processes? Got the droidicas. I was trying to do the Clone Wars method for the droidicas, where you have to roll a grenade at low velocity through the shield of the droidica, right? If you get it just right, it will roll inside instead of bouncing off. Does not seem to be the case in this game, or at least I couldn't master the technique, the Saw Gerrera technique. What was that planet called? Saw Gerrera's planet, where he was with his sister. I want to say it has an M name. An M name, I don't remember. Mandalore. Malachor. Can I think of any other Star Wars names with Star Wars planet that starts with an M? Polis Massa. Doesn't really count, I guess. And also that might... Wait, what is... It's Polis Massa, that, I think that's that medical asteroid, right? From, Star Wars Battlefront 2. Mandalore, Malachor... what's the one from Knights of the Old Republic with the fish people? Manon, right? Manon. Manon, okay. I thought of one more. There we go. I'll call that a victory. So, in terms of Star Wars games, there's been some announcements recently. Nothing super concrete. There is a sort of XCOM style Star Wars game coming out at some point, which I'm pretty excited to check out. there's one that's like, I think it was just announced, so I don't remember the details. It's sort of a spiritual successor to Knights of the Old Republic, I believe. I don't know if it has any of the, like, creative team attached to it or whatever, but that was the announcement hype was like from the creator or from the developer of Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, something like that. And had a cool cinematic anyways, which of course means nothing for the quality of a game. Slice, substation, terminal. Slice, substation, terminal. Slice, substation, terminal. There's a lot of it. Oh, there's a spider droid. Back up, back up, back up. It's getting a little crazy here.